In this second presentation regarding political cartoons about Syria, I'd like to review the elements of design, how they are used in cartoons, and how these elements and techniques affect reactions to and interpretations of the images. The major elements of design are line, shape, color, and value. The elements of design are the building blocks to art as different notes on a musical scale are the foundations of music. With these elements of design in mind, let's take a look at three political cartoons, all of which surround the issue of Syria's use of chemical weapons. In the first cartoon, we immediately see that line is a significant part of the image. Different types of lines can create different visual effects, but line is nothing more than a directional mark that outlines or provides a skeleton for objects in an image. Although the image is stylized and simplified, we still immediately recognize skulls, bones, and flames. Despite the use of lines, shapes, and symbols, the emotional response to the cartoon at this point is minimal. There is very little power to the image. That's when color and shades of color, or value, come into play. Suddenly, a boring line drawing becomes a dark and almost oppressive image. The red pile in the middle of the image not only reinforces the idea of blood and death, but the vibrancy of the color itself draws our attention. Despite our disgust, it is hard to pull our eyes away from the gory center of the cartoon. Additionally, the dark foreground and background adds intensity to the hellish image. Suddenly, with the addition of color and value, our emotions become as fiery as the image itself. Although the text isn't included in any element of design, it is an important part of the narrative of the cartoon. While our attention is drawn to the pile of blood and gore, we hardly even notice the figure with a little bottle in his hands. As a result, the caption is a bit disorienting. We have been focused on the blood and destruction, but the caption is focused on the chemicals. This clear juxtaposition of the two outrages, the death of the masses as the result of a civil war on the one hand, and the use of chemical weapons on the other, reveals the irony and misguided focus of the government. The image is saying, we can ignore the mounds of human remains, but uncapping that little bottle of chemicals, that's going too far? This satirical theme is suggesting that people are putting too much emphasis on the use of chemical weapons, and not enough emphasis on the thousands killed in Syria by other means. This is a theme that comes up often in Syrian political cartoons. The second cartoon I examined has a similar message to the first. It points out the discrepancy between our responses to two different types of killings. It comments on the supposed inequality of different types of murder, and it satirizes the view that murder by chemical weapons should receive more attention than any other type of murder. This image uses a principle of design called repetition. The idea of repetition as a design technique has existed for centuries, used, very notably, in ancient architecture. For example, Greek temples often used repetition of columns to create a sense of power and grandness. The same concept of repetition also works for flat two-dimensional spaces. By itself, one coffin or one grave seems small and insignificant. Repetition adds depth and a sense of scale to the image. Suddenly the cartoon is no longer simply about one individual who died, but about the host of casualties resulting from the Civil War. That said, the point of the cartoon isn't merely to remind the viewer of the scale of the conflict. If that was the case, then the artist could have more successfully conveyed this idea if he had included significantly more coffins. There is more to the image than just repetition. A principle of design closely associated with repetition is variation. If one object within a set of repeating objects is changed, our focus is suddenly drawn to the thing that is different. It creates a focal point that tells the viewer, look here, this is important. This cartoon uses the same principle of variation. It separates the coffin for the chemical weapons victim from the others. It sets it apart visually, informing us that this is the most important part of the image. This visual separation brilliantly mirrors the concept the cartoon is trying to illustrate. Each coffin looks the same. There are only a few words that are different on each of the coffins. The only reason that the last coffin is more important than the others is because the artist says so. In the same way, the only reason casualties resulting from chemical weapons are considered different from airstrikes or gunfire is because the US and the global community say so. Moreover, the minimalism, or economy, used by the artist also serves to make a point. The artist wanted to reduce the differences between the coffins. He wanted to strip the coffins to the basics. He wanted to show how every death is equally atrocious. This message is best conveyed by subtlety. The message of the third cartoon is almost the opposite of the first two. The third cartoon uses iconography to show us just how bad the use of chemical weapons is. The first clear icon or symbol is the skull and crossbones on the flask. People immediately understand this to mean poison. This is a very simple visual cue, but it has a significant impact on the message of the image. Another equally obvious symbol is the swastika patch on the sleeve. The swastika and the image of Hitler represent the worst of the worst, the genocide by which all other mass murders are measured. By placing Hitler and his Nazis in the same space as Assad, a comparison is drawn. When Hitler responds to the news that Assad gasses his own people by saying, "I'm a fan of your work," the cartoonist is suggesting that Assad is equal to or even worse than Hitler. This understanding of the symbols and context of the image gives the cartoon the power that it possesses. Using symbols triggers schemas in our minds. When we see a simple figure, Hitler for example, we do not simply recognize the identity of the person and stop our analysis there. Rather, when we see Hitler, all the knowledge and emotions that we have associated with the man are suddenly brought into the discourse and interpretation of the image.
Remove Hitler as an icon, and the image doesn't make any sense.
For this reason, iconography is one of the cartoonist's greatest friends. Not everything needs to be stated explicitly. As long as the viewer understands what he is looking at, an artist can use viewers' knowledge and emotions to lead them to a conclusion. A picture is worth 1,000 words because of symbols and schemas. A final thought on this image deals mainly with shape. Assad is clearly stylized. His body looks narrow, hard, and pointy. His rigid angularity parallels famous Disney villains. Everything about his portrayal screams bad. The way a character is designed has a huge influence on how it is perceived. Moving beyond the artistic tools cartoonists use to communicate their ideas, what is it that cartoons do that other media do not? First of all, cartoons are not meant to be a source of news broadcasting. If someone tried to get all their news through political cartoons, they would be very confused and virtually ignorant of actual current events. Rather, cartoons are meant to be supplementary readings. They will not provide a major comprehensive overview, but they will provide a nuanced, thought-provoking piece for discussion. Many cartoons take the unpopular side of an issue, as they attempt to show that there is context, history, and complexity to issues. And oftentimes, rather than clarifying current events with easy answers, cartoons provoke additional questions. But is this good or bad? In a country where everyone thinks they know what needs to be done? In a land that believes it can do no wrong? In a government that assumes throwing its military at any, quote, problem is the best solution? Adding a little complexity to an issue may be just what people need.